Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Trade the Chain. Thank you for joining us. It is September 13th. Yes, I did get the day right. I see all those comments in the section there. Sorry we're a little bit late. No, I was not at the bar. Wish I was. But so there we go, a little feedback. Anyway, it is Monday. We have some news to kick off. Everybody saw what's going on with Litecoin. Obviously, we're going to cover that. Also, the little tumultuous market action with Bitcoin and Ethereum, by the way, is getting heavily volatile on us over the last 12 hours. But this isn't something that we're not used to, folks. But we're going to break it down and see what's up. Just a quick reminder, anything that we say, Market Rebellion, Trade the Chain, CJ, Monte, myself, it is not financial advice. We're here to educate only and for that purpose solely. So with that being said, CJ, Monte, how was your weekend?
It was good, Alex. Thank you for asking. Where are you right now? Because I don't recognize that background.
This is yet another hotel room. So I'm up here in Manhattan, New York, and I'm here for the SALT conference and throwing a little party tomorrow night.
Very nice, very nice. I know our boss, John, is there. Looking forward to that party. Whenever you guys get together, it's quite the scene. So
that is an understatement.
We got we got John, who's the life of every party, and then we have Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank and Anthony Scaramucci, who's the host of the SALT conference. So the four of us will be blasting down the doors and throwing back some tequila, hopefully.
Yeah, I saw today there was at SALT there was a panel going on with Sam Bankman-Fried, and also the head of Solana as well. Lots of money up on that stage right now. Exciting stuff.
A lot of billionaires at SALT this year, and not from the traditional market. So it's interesting to see the mix going on. Also, we got the Voyager Trade the Chain race car on the show floor at Javits Center. Landon's up here as well, so that's it's all for a fun time.
Wish I could be there, but we are here watching these markets. So let's give the people what they want. What do you say, guys?
Let's go for it.
Yeah, first of all, why don't we address what's in the title of this episode, What the FUD? That's referring to the Litecoin news that we had earlier today, at least from my interpretation, because, even Monte and I said this morning, like, this doesn't really make sense. This sounds like news from 2017. I haven't heard anything about Litecoin or any developments. And plus, it wouldn't be optimal as a source of payments for Walmart. I don't know why you wouldn't just use something like USDC on Solana. Seems like a far better alternative. But nonetheless, that news came out being fake. And Walmart's... What are you guys laughing at?
CJ, that was the most political way to cover the second half of that title I've ever heard. But Congrats on that.
Anyways, the news was fake. And so whoever... there was a massive 20% increase in Litecoin, and then somebody sold hard into it. So if you look at that chart, there's an incredible candle wick on that one. But that seemed to bring the collective industry down, or at least Bitcoin. I think it traded up to like 46 and then dropped right back to 44 and then 43. However, now we're recovering a little bit, seeing some more supply absorption now at the 44.5 level. So why don't we jump into the charts? But before we do anything, you guys want to say in terms of recent events such as those?
We've said it all.
That was just a weird morning. Like, there's a lot of weird mornings in crypto, but today, it was looking like we were set for a breakdown. Then we got positive news. We had MicroStrategy and that Litecoin news, which was weird, but very positive. And then it all came crashing down, and the sell-off continued. But yeah, let's take a look at the charts, CJ.
And to your note, while you're pulling up the chart, CJ, to Monte, even that MicroStrategy buy, those buys and those announcements, they just don't do anything for the market anymore. I don't know if I'm surprised by it, but
yeah, this isn't October of 2020 anymore. It takes a lot to move this market. There's a lot of capital here. But what are you seeing technically, CJ?
I wouldn't be surprised if we hung out around this area. Like, we are in a new channel in the trend. We had the accumulation phase, the markup phase, and then the take profit during that markup. And the trend was critically hurt when we had that mass liquidation last week. Ever since, we've just hovered below the 46K level. However, what these wicks suggest to me is that supply is being absorbed. The whales or larger term buyers are taking these opportunities with these candle wicks down as an opportunity to accumulate more in the long term. And we're seeing that from on-chain data. We're seeing that from long-term holders and a couple glass node charts I can bring up in a minute. But for now, I'm a little bit neutral on the trend, at least in Bitcoin. I do think we're going to see a lot of profit taking in the altcoin market as a result of Bitcoin dominance going back and increasing. Nevertheless, I think Bitcoin is definitely going to bounce around here from the 42K level to the 50K level here until something can have enough of a catalyst to break us through that previous 52K level. So even if we go up and go all the way to 50, in my mind, there's still a possibility that we go back and test these lows at 42K. And think about if we were to do that again. Think about if we were to have some type of fake out like that. Everybody would reload on Solana or Luna or ADA or AVAX. I mean, so many altcoins have just gone parabolic. And what Monte and I like to talk about a lot is a rotation of capital within the space. Like November and October in 2020, it was Bitcoin and its ascent to 30 and 40 and then eventually 60K that really started the bull market. And then you see the rotation of capital into the altcoins and we see things go parabolic. And so because of that fact, because we're starting to see Bitcoin stagnate now and alts go parabolic, I think that we're likely going to see those come down. And I love the fundamentals of Solana. I like the fundamentals of ADA a little less, but I still do like them. Nonetheless, I think that we're going to see some profit taking and there's going to be some better buying opportunities for those altcoins that have been extraordinarily hot. And the thing about Bitcoin dominance is that I think we're going to see a regression to this moving average and an increase in Bitcoin dominance. And typically, that occurs in two situations. Either one, we're seeing a sell-off and Bitcoin is being the most resilient of the assets that are being sold, or we have Bitcoin leading the charge and everything else kind of stagnating. But one technical factor that I want to point out and make very clear is this really large divergence in terms of the MACD. And we're also getting a bullish crossover in the MACD as well on Bitcoin dominance. But look at how much lower this low in the MACD is compared to, our recent low of, from May to June. There's a huge divergence there. And I think that that's very indicative of a weakening in the bearish trend. Something that I'll compare this to is Bitcoin and when we bottomed. One thing that we were looking at a lot to call a bottom was this divergence in the MACD. We had a declining price, but the MACD was creating higher lows. So when you get that, it is a weakening in the trend until we ultimately switch direction. So I think we're going to see something similar occur like that in Bitcoin dominance. And likely there will be a lot of profit taking in the altcoin space, providing better buying opportunities in the short-term future.
Yeah,
no, go ahead, Monte.
You made some great points there, CJ. And one thing we talked about this morning a little bit was an article that had an analysis from a JP Morgan analyst over the weekend. And he made some similarities, or he drew on some similarities between May and now. And he said that, the market is looking overextended comparably to what we saw in May. But I would disagree with that. And I think your MACD argument on Bitcoin dominance is one strong argument in that case. But another one as well is this chart right here. And that's the Bitcoin supply held by long-term holders. This right here, for me, is the biggest difference. In May, we saw, continued distribution from these long-term holders. We are not seeing that. We're seeing the exact opposite right now. We're seeing continued accumulation from the long-term holders. And this effect was only exacerbated last week when we had that massive liquidation event that moved a bunch of capital from the retail participants into the hands of these longer-term holders and institutions. So I think that both the MACD and Bitcoin dominance and this, illiquid supply issue are two major differences between now and May of 2020. But to that point, and to your point about, the market kind of cooling off a bit, CJ, I think you're right. And I saw Bob Dittrich was in the chat here. What is up, Bob? And he was pointing out these bearish pennants we're seeing on both Bitcoin and ETH, with this flagpole from the Tuesday liquidations kind of really extending us all the way down here. And typically you can kind of extrapolate the length of this flagpole to kind of give an estimate to where the breakdown will go to. But for me, I think the critical level is 42K. I want to see Bitcoin hold this level. We saw a ton of volume at this level on the way up and also on the way down earlier in the year. So I think that if we can perhaps hold this level, this would be an ideal place for a bounce and then a regain of that Bitcoin dominance that CJ was mentioning. So that is what I'll be watching for in the interim here.
Now, I'm sorry, go ahead, CJ.
No, I was just wondering what was making all that noise in your hotel room, but let's proceed.
I think it was me taking a sip of Dr. Pepper. I'm really sorry. It's very sensitive. When it comes to what's happening with Bitcoin, though, and looking at that 42K support, as well as the dominance issue with the against the altcoins, are you seeing anything that's correlating with Ethereum from the Bitcoin charts? Because we got very volatile this morning with Ethereum, and I'm curious to get your take on what's happening over there as well.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, ETH is looking like it's in a very similar position as Bitcoin. Let me pull up this chart just real quick. And for me, the comparable level for ETH for Bitcoin is about at the 42K level is about 2,900. We've seen relentless buying of ETH when we dip below 3K. And I kind of expect that to continue here. You can draw the same pennant formation right around here. And I would watch for a breakdown below this level. I think that 2,900 is comparable in a lot of ways because of what we saw technically earlier in the year. Back here in when we were dipping initially, we were trying very hard to get above this level on bounces, but it just was not happening. And now I expect us to see a similar thing on the dips. I expect the bulls to relentlessly buy below this level. And I think that ETH will perform comparably to Bitcoin just because it is, right now trending so in tandem, but also just because of its large market cap, strong audience of traders, institutional interest, and a lot more factors. So I think that, looking at Bitcoin and ETH, I think they'll trend together in the next couple of weeks. But I just wanted to take a look at real quick the Bitcoin daily sentiment, because I think that this is really interesting. This sentiment has not turned down. In fact, has just, kind of leveled off here up very high. But I have been encouraged by the fact that over the weekend, we saw positive sentiment despite negative price action. And typically, I think that with this sort of move to the downside and with all the FUD we're seeing in the markets, sentiment would typically be much lower. But given the fact that long-term holders aren't selling, institutions are still showing interest, I'm not really all that surprised that sentiment is still strong at this point in time.
Yeah, I'm still, my conviction holds true, the momentum in the marketplace. These are just some of those steps that we're taking as we go through the fall and the wintertime. To me, nothing has changed in that thought process. One of the things that, I've always been concerned of and that we've always touched here is the relationship with the S&P 500. So, CJ, I don't know if you could break down what's happening in the traditional markets right now, but kind of help us get that follow lead relationship along with the market.
I'm glad you bring that up, Alex, because the S&P has been down past couple days, and now it actually is getting to the point where it's testing some critical levels. So why don't we pull up that chart? I also have an interesting chart or schematic for long-term, like mega structures, decade structures long in the S&P. So I'm excited to check that out and show it to you guys.
Very cool.
So starting here with the S&P, let me go ahead and add the TD sequential indicator, because this was very textbook in terms of profit taking. But this is a really nice top here on this 9 candle. And then just bearish engulfing, really following. Sellers are really strong at this particular point. But you can see that doji candle, which occurred at the top of an uptrend. Anytime you get a doji candle at the top of an uptrend that is also paired with a TD sequential 9 and, top on decreasing momentum in the CCI, I think it's a very strong indication that we're going to revert to the moving average. The thing that's interesting here is that we've held this level 1, 2, 3, 7 times now. I mean, maybe even more going back longer, but this is a critical level. And if we aren't able to close above it, we might be in for a further correction in the S&P 500. And what does that do? That leads investors to go from being in equities or more risk on stocks into the dollar or into cash as a safe haven. And that makes the DXY increase. And typically we've had somewhat of an inverse relationship between the DXY and Bitcoin. When the dollar is really strong, it makes it that much harder for Bitcoin to rally. Doesn't mean it can't, but it's almost like added sell pressure. So I do want to make this point and just like really make you guys cautious. If this doesn't hold, we could have a much further correction in the S&P. And if we look at it like historically, October is not a good month in terms of like seasonality for the overall equity market. Now, this more mega schematic that I want to show has to do with the overall market going all the way back to the 30s, in fact. And this has to do with the Dow Jones, specifically the Dow. But typically what we experience when you break this down from a megastructure is you have these generational moves where the stock market trends in a very linear fashion and increases quite drastically. We can see that the silent generation really powered the bull market all the way through the 50s and 60s. That was kind of a retroactive from the New Deal and whatnot. And then we have these periods of consolidation in which the previous generation either wasn't significant enough to power the market, or perhaps there were kind of other forces at play. Our most recent consolidation between the years of 1987 and all the way up going to 2010, that was from Generation X. And Generation X was not as significant as the baby boomers or the silent generation in terms of wealth accumulation and overall size. So that's why we didn't get a really large and profuse run-up, in my opinion. There are bull markets and bear markets, in between this little mega structure, but overall, where the trend is moving is rather consistent. But something I want to point to and where we can bring this today is, where are we going to go? Well, we are at a point where we are nearing the overbought levels in the mega structure. However, the millennial generation is the largest generation we've ever experienced thus far. It's much larger than the baby boomers. And I think we're going to have a much larger rally or a very similar rally, based on that fact. And you can see these sharp, volatile reaction rallies all throughout that time. So I actually think that we're not really close to, say, a comparable period as like 1929. I think we're much more comparable to a phase like the 80s. If you look at this blow off top in 1987, the great crash, that looks very similar to what we experienced in COVID very recently. And of course, you have the subsequent reaction rally that takes us to new all-time highs. But as you'll notice, we did have somewhat of a correction, although the overall trend was linear. So going into the month of October here, it may be interesting if we get a similar correction. I'm not saying we're going to get a 70% correction or anything even comparable to the 1929 crash. I think the conditions fundamentally were way different. Nevertheless, this is a nice time to take profit if you've been in all the way since the bottom. So we'll see what happens. But overall, if we have the dollar strengthening, it's going to make it very difficult for Bitcoin. And that is kind of an outlying factor, kind of a black swan that we have to be aware of.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. It looks like I was part of the mega structure in between the boomers and the millennials. So I didn't really add to anything. But you're absolutely right. And that Black Swan event is something, especially with the strength of the US dollar, that we have to watch. I definitely stand fast that there's not going to be a change coming out of the Fed for the remainder of the year. I think they need to prop that economy up, even as artificial as it may be, until then. And then we'll reassess, I think beginning Q1 2022 and see where it goes from there. I personally, not CJ or Monte, I have a sense that we're going to have a little disruption in 2022 when it comes to the S&P 500 and the economy as a whole. So we'll definitely be watching things like whether it's new home sales, whether it's consumer confidence that decays because of the various indexes, but all those telltale signs which lead into an overall disruption of the economy. Anything you guys want to hit on? Any outliers that you guys have been paying special attention to as far as individual coins? What did you guys cover anything? What did you cover last week on the? I forgot the name.
Man,
The Daily Crypto Byte.
Disrespectful, Alex.
Sounds like you've been keeping up with a lot of episodes, Alex.
Dude, I've been flying so much. I have no idea what's going on right now.
Can I toss a question to CJ real quick about that S&P chart that you're showing? Because we've seen this a lot of times in the past, that retest of that moving average, which is the 20-day smooth moving average, right?
Yeah, 20 period.
Yeah. Would you become bullish if you got a bullish engulfing candle on the S&P tomorrow? Because in the past, every time we've come down to retest that moving average, it's been followed by a bullish engulfing candle. And I know you have successfully traded options and Bitcoin all around just that simple moving average bullish engulfing candle strategy. Do you think that holds up here?
Well, TA works until it doesn't. That's why I'm extraordinarily cautious. I'm extraordinarily cautious every single time we test this level. And it's kind of funny. Everybody gets really panicky and scared. I've noticed. However, if we are to get a bullish engulfing candle like there, I will look to enter, and I will look to, buy some options in the SPY or something of that sort, or any just volatile index. However, we haven't gotten that yet. But that was something we were definitely following back here. And that was a bullish entry for us. So thank you for bringing that up, Monte. But that is definitely an entry that I was forgetting to mention.
All right, very cool. Well, it's again a happy Monday, and we're definitely hanging out. Oh boy, here goes CJ.
Before you wrap the show up, you did ask if we could show some coins that we're looking at or very interested in. Could we cover like one or two? I only have one.
Yeah, I have no problem covering. I was
okay.
Yeah, throw it up there. I was waiting for some like, hey, hang on, chart's coming.
Okay, I want to bring up the altcoin perpetual index because it actually looks somewhat similar to Bitcoin in the sense that it looks like supply absorption. So if we go to total 2, which is the total altcoin market cap, we haven't gotten a turnaround on the CCI just yet. But let me add some other oscillators. Like I want to see what the MACD is doing. Still bearish on most of the oscillators. So that's something to definitely take into account. Nonetheless, look at these wicks. To me, these wicks are indicative of supply absorption, because if the trend was truly weak and each time larger players test support like this, it would have likely broken through already. It's almost reminiscent of these wicks right here, because this was massive supply absorption that we saw all throughout that recent downtrend. So although the oscillators are not turning yet, and we're not really seeing any explicit buy signals, this looks like an interesting pullback area where we're starting to see some supply in the altcoins being lifted from the market. Now, one altcoin that I've enjoyed and have looked at very strongly is Serum. And I'm really interested in the Solana ecosystem after it's gone up so much. But when you look at Serum, every utility blockchain needs a very strong decentralized exchange. And whether that be Uniswap on Ethereum or PancakeSwap on Binance, I want to find out or take a bet on which decentralized exchange is going to be the primary automated market maker for the Solana ecosystem. Right now, it's looking to be Serum. Now, I'm not entering anything in Serum right now, but I think if we get an opportunity in Luna, ADA, Solana with a larger term pullback here, then I think that that's a really interesting asset that me personally will be taking a shot at, because I love Amelia research. Sorry if I mispronounced that, but also FTX and SBF. They're backing that project, and so I think that has a lot of potential. But any projects, Monte, that you'd like to share that you're interested in?
Yeah, Alex, you're muted.
Thank you for that. You did that to me, I think.
I wish I could do that. I wish.
Jeez. The first thing is the Serum is looking mighty tasty. I will say that it has been for quite some time. And another one that I'm looking at is HBAR and Luna as well. So if maybe after Monte, you were about to interject with something from your side, if you guys could just maybe cover HBAR or Luna real quickly, that would be great.
Yeah, sure thing. There's been lots of assets, I think, that have shown strength over the last couple of weeks that are going to show renewed strength towards the end of this market cycle. Those assets you just named, HBAR, made new all-time highs over the weekend, looking incredibly strong. Another asset that I'm going to go into this right now. Another asset that I like a lot is Algo. I think Algo has tremendous upside potential towards the end of this market cycle, from both a fundamental and technical perspective. One thing I think is going to be really important now is looking to assets that can possibly gain institutional speculation. And I think Algo fits that bill. Luna fits that bill as well. So those are two assets that I am very bullish on to end the year, because I think that although there is institutional participation in those assets now, that's just the beginning of it. And eventually there will be a much greater scale of institutional interest that will just bolster the value of these products to a new level. So Algo and Luna are probably beyond, and obviously I love Serum as well. And the whole Solana ecosystem, I think, doesn't just have tremendous growth potential to end this year, but going forward over the next, couple of years, I think Solana could be a tremendous performer. So anything in the Solana ecosystem, Luna, Algo, those are some that I'm watching here.
Which is, begs the question. It's kind of like a space race here when it comes to chains. And with the lineup now, and the lineup is always changing, where do you think, let's call it Ethereum. Well, let's get Ethereum out of it. Where do you think Cardano, AVAX, Polygon, and Solana are ranking as far as who's winning the race? Because it seems to change every month.
That's a very good question. And whoever answers it correctly is going to be very, very well off. I like Solana just because of the institutional interest. Also Ethereum because it's the first mover. And I think it's going to be very difficult to unshake that first mover advantage. Just because, like, when you make a technology and you have to, offboard a ton of people who already have been using, one network, it's difficult to dismantle that network effect unless you're like 5 to 10 times better than the alternative. In that case would be Ethereum. So, ADA, we'll see. I think that it was definitely overhyped in terms of price. Not saying there isn't potential there, but I do think Solana is going to be much, much greater than all of those in terms of the utility blockchains.
Very cool. One of the people we see in the chats right now, Lucas Bradley. We've been texting. I definitely need to get him back on the show with us so we can talk about some technical details behind the chains and what he's seeing as far as movement forward. With regards to that, I think I'm going to call it now. We've done a lot. We've done a lot of talking today. We will be back tomorrow, which is good. I know we've been on an offset schedule for the last couple of weeks. I slept in an airport Saturday morning from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. before my flight because the Trade the Chain Send car got 8th place in Richmond, a top 10 finish. We were ecstatic, and we're on the verge of getting into the playoffs, depending on the race in Bristol coming up this weekend. So needless to say, I was up late and I slept in an airport. Other than that, we'll be back regular time tomorrow, of course, with our traditional 5 minutes later than what we post the time we're coming on the air, because we just like to keep you on your toes. Also, a couple of other things, hey, if you're in New York attending the SOL conference, I'm here. And we got that nice party tomorrow as well. I had a whole bunch of things to announce, but if you follow the Send Token Twitter, keep an eye on it later this afternoon, evening. I think there might be something coming out on it that has to do with a new product that's been in the works for some time. Maybe a little teaser of sorts, but.
Awesome price action. I
don't talk about the price. I just talk about the products.
We'll wrap it up.
All right, folks. Thank you very much. Hang on to your handlebars. I promise we will be back tomorrow. Thank you always for watching and appreciate everything. So take it easy, guys.